Good morning. I'm Ben Ayers, Dean of the Terry College of Business, and I am pleased to welcome you all to the 2024 Mason Public Leadership Lecture, which is a fall UGA signature lecture with Dan Amos, who's the chairman, CEO, and president of Aflac Incorporated. This lecture is part of the Terry Leadership Speaker Series, which has brought many distinguished leaders from the public and private sectors to the UGA campus to educate and to inspire our students. Today's honored speaker, Dan Amos, will participate in a discussion that will be moderated by E.B. Billig, an ILA Leadership Fellow. The namesake of the Mason Public Leadership Lecture is unable to be with us this morning. Keith Mason is a loyal University of Georgia alumnus who served as trustee of the UGA Foundation for over a decade. This lecture series reflects one of Keith's passions and an essential component of the UGA experience, public leadership. He shares my belief that this university, the birthplace of public higher education in America, is responsible for producing outstanding leaders for our state, our nation, and our world. Through attention and action, true public leaders demonstrate that success in their fields is also defined by the contributions that they make to others. We are indebted to Keith and his wife, Twinker, for their generosity in supporting this lecture series and for all they do for the University of Georgia. Following today's discussion, I will read some concluding remarks from Keith. We are glad to have with us this morning Provost Hu and several other UGA administrators and deans with us. Thank you all for being with us today. And at this time, I'll turn the podium over to President Jerry W. Moorhead to introduce Dan Amos.
Well, good morning, everyone, and thank you, Dean Ayers. I'm delighted to be with all of you today to introduce a distinguished alumnus of the Terry College of Business, a loyal supporter of the University of Georgia, and an extraordinary business and community leader, Mr. Dan Amos. As chairman, CEO, and president of Aflac Incorporated, Dan has exemplified innovative leadership, transforming Aflac into a globally recognized company with operations in the United States and Japan. Under Dan's leadership as CEO, Aflac Incorporated's total return to shareholders, including reinvested dividends through the end of 2023, has exceeded 15,400%. That is more than 5 times the return of the Dow Jones Industrial Average, more than 10 times the return of the S&P 500 Life and Health Insurance Index, and nearly 2 times Warren Buffett's Berkshire Hathaway. In fact, during the same time, stock started at about 95 cents per share, but they just reached today over $113 per share. Dan's a Georgia native and began working for Aflac as a teenager in the summers. And after graduating from the University of Georgia with a degree in risk management and insurance, a #1 ranked program, in 1973, he joined Aflac's sales force working on commission. Under Dan's leadership, his sales territory became the #1 producing area in 1981 and in 1982. And Dan was made president of the company in just 10 years after graduation. He was promoted to chief operating officer in 1987. And in 1990, he became CEO of Aflac, and in 2001, he added the role of chairman of the board. Dan is now the second longest serving CEO in the Fortune 250. He has been recognized as one of the 100 best performing CEOs in the world by Harvard Business Review 5 times. He also has been widely credited for launching the beloved Aflac Duck campaign, which made Aflac a household name. Dan and Aflac are renowned for their commitment to responsible investment and to business practices that are ethical, inclusive, and sustainable. Aflac has been recognized by Fortune magazine as one of the world's most admired companies for 23 years. In addition to Dan's business achievements, he's deeply committed to philanthropy. 30 years ago, he and his wife, Kathleen, who earned her law degree from the University of Georgia, spearheaded Aflac's support for children diagnosed with cancer. Since then, Aflac and its employees and independent sales associates have raised more than $184 million for the Aflac Cancer and Blood Disorders Center at Children's Healthcare of Atlanta. That's now one of the leading childhood cancer, hematology, and blood and marrow transplant programs in the entire country. More recently, Dan has been the driving force behind the My Special Aflac Duck. That's a robot designed to comfort children during their cancer care and sickle cell disease treatment. My Special Aflac Duck was named one of the best inventions of 2018 by Time magazine, and Aflac has now provided more than 32,000 of these robotic companions free of charge to children diagnosed with cancer or sickle cell disease in the United States, Japan, and Northern Ireland. Dan's received numerous awards over the years, including the Salute to Greatness Award from the Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Center and the Anti-Defamation League's Torch of Liberty Award. In 2023, he was inducted as a Georgia trustee by the Georgia Historical Society and the Office of the Governor for exemplifying the motto, "Not for self, but for others," a motto that resonates here at the University of Georgia. It has been my distinct pleasure as president to get to know Dan as a dear friend and as one of the university's most generous and steadfast supporters. Among his many contributions to our institution, he is the former chair of the UGA Foundation Board of Trustees, and he served as chair of the highly successful Business Terry campaign and made a major leadership gift to support it. He's also supported UGA in so many ways and in so many other places. Dan's remarkable contributions to both business and society continue to inspire us all, and we are fortunate to hear from him today. So please join me in welcoming Mr. Dan Amos.
Good morning and welcome to the Mason Public Leadership Lecture Series. My name is E.B. Billig. I am a senior leadership fellow studying finance and international business. Over the past few weeks, I've had the pleasure of getting to know Mr. Amos, and I'm excited to facilitate today's discussion. You bring so much wisdom and insight through your experience to the business and insurance industries. Thank you for joining us today. It is an honor to have you.
My pleasure, thank you.
So to start us off, being back at your alma mater, let's go back to before you were even a student here at UGA. What made you choose UGA, and can you tell us a little bit about the picture behind us?
Oh, that was my trailer at the University of Georgia. And they found that photo, and they kidded me at the company and said, "You got to show that. You think of CEOs living the life." And I said, "Well, I thought I was living the life when I was living at 7D Bulldog Trailer Park." It really, the University of Georgia has been part of my heart and part of my mind ever since the day I walked on the campus. It was a great school when I went there. It's better now. I couldn't even get in now, I don't think. It's that tough. But what I found about schools is there's two elements. There's the educational level and there's the networking level. And if you were going to live in the state, then I thought state universities were a good place to go. And interestingly enough, as I reflect back on my career, my closest friends are really the people that I knew from the University of Georgia my freshman and sophomore year. And to this day, I laugh that most CEOs don't get along with plaintiffs' attorneys, and yet Jim Butler and Joel Wooten were my friends in college and are friends this day. And most of them don't know that when you look at it, and having the diverse ability to be able to view things from different angles has helped me over the years. So I would just say it being a great university and all the people you get to know by being in that state also helps.
Absolutely. As President Moore mentioned, you began working at Aflac in your teenage years. Can you tell me about going from being a teenager at the company to now being the CEO of one of the most renowned companies in the world?
Well, first of all, my parents were involved because my uncle, John, who was the CEO, started the company with my dad and another uncle. So for me to say you can take my example and use it, I obviously got a head start. But to me, part of life is being very open and candid with people. And I remember when I first came in, I decided I didn't want to go into any area that was subjective. I debated whether to be a lawyer, but you could argue whether or not they were doing a good job or a bad job. If I went into administration, you could argue. And so I decided I wanted to go in sales, and I went on commission. And I said, if I do a good job, it'll stand out. And I laughed that ended up being exactly what was best for me. Whereas so you have advantages of being family, but also disadvantages. And people look at you through a cynical view when you're coming into something that your family is associated with. And so I would laugh and kid them and say, I don't know how I got this job. I guess when I was having dinner with my dad, I said, "Dad, when can I come into the company?" And they'd kind of laugh about it, and that's how it got started. But ultimately, I think it was that driven off goals ultimately is what made the difference.
Yeah, that's really good. Talking about, your dad and your uncles and kind of the early experiences you had, can you talk on how those have kind of shaped your leadership style and your career aspirations?
Well, we didn't have any money. How we ended up in Columbus, Georgia was Columbus was the largest city in the South that didn't have an insurance company. You had them in Macon and Augusta, and you had them in Jackson, Mississippi, and Montgomery, and Columbia, South Carolina, and Columbus didn't have one. And the reason that mattered is they sold the stock door to door to see if they could get people to invest. And basically, if you bought 100 shares of stock, it was $1,100, and we had a payment plan, and that's how it kind of started from there. And so that's kind of what made it take off. So, and then over time it grew, and we went from regional to throughout the U.S. and then ultimately doing business in Japan. And so it was and so what I would say, though, that as CEOs and as a person that's been engaged is people are always pushing you to expand beyond your realm. And you have to ultimately decide what is important to you and have a master plan for how you're going to get there. So in our company, we didn't try to go to the entire U.S. We got licensed in Alabama, Georgia, and Florida and stuck with that for 5 years or more, and then added a few more and added a few more. But we would make sure we knew what we were doing. And so that structure has always made a difference in what we've done.
It's really insightful on how y'all kind of took a small, it's such a big company now, but how you could take such a small thing and just little bit by bit kind of build it. Being a Terry graduate, how do you feel like your time here at the University of Georgia contributed to your personal and your professional development?
Well, I give credit to the University of Georgia for a lot of my success. I think, first of all, the 3 principles of risk management and insurance: don't risk a lot for a little, don't risk more than you can afford to lose, and consider the odds. I've used that with every decision that I've made in life almost. And I'm always preaching to use that. We're in the insurance business. Insurance business is to take risk, but to manage the risk that you're taking. So we're not against risk, it's just how much you manage it. And if you use those 3 principles, it makes a big difference. And so that has been, and Dr. Leverett, who was head of it, was a role model for me that I always loved him. He was funny, nice, and understood business, and especially the insurance business. And so that made a difference.
Absolutely. Even serving as such a recognized and renowned CEO, you're very involved in your community and service. Can you talk a little bit about what has led you to be so involved in your community over the years?
Well, I have to say that that's always been part of the family, that we always felt like you need to give back. And, I don't think on my tombstone I want, he was a great business person. Other things are more important than that. But it's because of success in the business that you can do other things and help others. And it also takes the institution that you're working with to encourage you to be involved. I never dreamed I would be as involved as I was at the University of Georgia, but they were good at keeping me engaged. I didn't plan on being head of the capital campaign for the business school, but when they asked me, and if I really believed what I said, that they were the reason for my success, then how can you turn it down? You got to give back. And I felt like that was the case, and I wanted to do it. And it's not only doing it, but I've enjoyed doing it from a personal perspective. And from a corporate perspective, giving back is very important. Like, for example, the Aflac Cancer Center. Well, we're in the insurance business that makes money on health insurance. So what better way than to give money back and trying to save the lives of children with cancer and help the families adapt. And one interesting story about that, and there's a lesson there, is they came to ask me for $25,000. And they had a naming opportunity. It was Eggleston at the time before they merged, Eggleston Cancer Center. And I said, what does it cost to name and they said, $3 million. And I said, well, and this has been almost 30 years ago, so that was really big money. And I said, well, I may be interested in the $3 million, but I'm not interested in the $25,000. I said, it's all or nothing, and I've got to take it back, and we've got to look at it. And Kathleen, my wife now, but at the time was in charge of Philanthropy, she liked the idea and helped push that, and we ended up ultimately doing it. And it's connected us so well in the business and made such a difference because we're all engaged in helping kids with cancer. And it continues to grow to this day.
Yeah, you talk a lot about being involved, obviously, with the local community, with the Aflac Cancer Center being in Atlanta, and just giving back to Athens. Why do you think it's essential for business leaders to step up and get involved in public or community leadership positions?
Well, I think it's important because it's a good business reason. If you can buy a policy from company X that's a good value, or you can buy it from us for the same value, but we're helping kids with cancer, aren't you more likely to help and go along with helping kids with cancer? And it can be that, it can be other things, it can be, anything you might be doing. The one thing about philanthropic is your heart has to be there. If your heart's not there, you don't need to do it. There's a quote in the Bible about where your heart is, where your treasure is, your heart will be also. And that's a lot of truth to that when you think about it. And so we as individuals have to find what it is that we like, and then you have to find at a corporate level what would be right. You may find the arts are important to you, or you may find that helping the needy, or now with what we've seen happen in Asheville and other places, that you want to help there. Whatever it might be, you just have to find that passion. And if you do, it'll drive your success for doing it. And on the other end, the people that we're giving the money to, they've got to, this sounds a little tacky, but it's true, they got to make you feel good about your giving. Because if you're not doing that, then you're less likely to give. If you didn't say, well, gosh, that really made a difference, then you say, well, I'd rather give it somewhere else that does.
Mm-hmm. Do you think it's important for business leaders to take a stand on public issues impacting their business and communities specifically? So for you, the insurance business, or your local community in Columbus, do you think it's important for you to take a stand on public issues?
That's a tough question. And the reason it's tough is where does it stop? We're in the insurance business, and I'm not in other businesses or other things that we are into. For example, I don't want to head this direction, but the elections. Who are you for? Well, that's a personal issue. And what I do personally, I don't sign documents, do things that represent me as CEO. If I want to personally do something, then that's different. I'm the only CEO I know in the state of Georgia that has ever been ahead of the Democratic Party fundraiser and the Republican Party fundraiser. I'm a chameleon. I want to be Switzerland and get along with everybody. So my rule is we support the incumbent unless the incumbent would hurt our company. And so sometimes that can work out great. One time, a congressman in Columbus was a Democrat, and we were for him. He decided that he was going to run one more time, and he ran against the Republican, and the Republican won. We ended up then, when he ran the second time, we supported the Republican because we didn't give him any money, the Republican, the first time. Well, the Democrat decided he was going to run again and came to me and said, I want money. And I said, well, I'm sorry, but the rule is I support the incumbent. So now I'm on the Republican side, not the Democrat side. And so I try to be as neutral on issues as we can, but there are certain things like equality and things like that are no-brainers. Women being treated equal. You know, one of the things that's important to us is we're one of the 100 best places to work in America for the last 20 years. We're the top 50 places for African Americans to work for the last 20 years. Best places for working women, and the list goes on. Those things are important to us, and we want to participate in those. But I don't want to go down a deep hole, because think about this. If I'm selling to this group and I declare I'm for something, most of America's 50-50 on a lot of things. So half of you as policyholders are going to be mad with me. The other half will be happy. But I want to sell you all. So I don't want to get in the middle of it. So I want to be as neutral as I can. But if there are issues that are conscious issues that deal with minority issues, things along those lines, then yes, we want to always make sure we're doing those.
In a previous conversation, we talked a lot about the diversity of your board. Can you tell us a little bit more about that and about how you as CEO have practiced being more inclusive of the kind of people that you are bringing up into leadership?
Well, I think we've always had a strong board. And it started with the first person I put on the board when I became CEO was Chuck Knapp, who was at the time president of the University of Georgia. And he retired, but he served for almost 30 years, Chuck. And so that was very important to us. And he had the character and the standing that we started a diverse program. And today we have, I can't remember if we have 11 or 10, but I think it's 10 right now. And 5 of them are women. And we have 2 African Americans. We have a Japanese. So we have a great diverse group of the board. And that's a good business decision. You know, I tell people this all the time. I'm now 70, but when I was in my 60s, I always said, I don't need to know how white 60-year-olds think. Hell, I'm one myself, so I'm only interested in what other people think. So I want to know how older people think. I want to know how young women think. I want to know how African American feels, because if I'm selling to you or hiring you, I want you to feel part of the team. And so you've got to have that diversity to make sure. And it's been a great decision for us over the years, and we continue to do that, and it's very important.
Yeah, not only is Aflac, as you spoke on, renowned for being a great place to work, it's also renowned for its philanthropic efforts. And I know you touched on the Aflac Cancer Center, but can you tell us a little bit more about some of the initiatives that you and the company are involved in?
Well, we set aside X amount of money that'll go basically to Columbus, and then it'll go to the state. But you have to remember, 70% of our company is located in Japan. It depends on where the yen is, but it varies up and down, but that. So giving to Columbus is giving because of the employees themselves and participating to make sure they have a better lifestyle and that they're happy living in Columbus, and that we support different things from baseball fields for Little League to Symphony to, but not the big money. The big money, we hone in on trying to make sure we do it to predominantly healthcare, because we're in the healthcare business. So we want to give back. So that's the way that we operate. And then we give on a statewide basis to certain things, the University of Georgia, whatever it might be. But that's how we've operated.
Can you tell us a little bit more about the Aflac Childhood Cancer Campaign?
Well, what I told you about is how we ended up giving was the $3 million. And the way I did it is that I matched whatever they raised for people that wanted to give up to a certain amount. And so it's kind of like siphoning. You kind of start the flow and then it continues. And so I was able to say, okay, every dollar you give, I'll give, and get our people, our field force predominantly, which are our salespeople, started giving. And they now give, it's a little over $1 million a month they give to the field to go to the Aflac Cancer Center. And you say, well, if they're in California, why are they giving to that? Well, they give second opinions. So if you've got a child, and let me say one thing about childhood cancer. When a child gets cancer in a town, everybody knows about it. They may not know about adults because cancer is a disease of age. The older you get, the higher the incidence rate is. But in the case of childhood cancer, it's fairly rare. But when it occurs, everybody knows it. So us participating in that has made a difference. And yes, if you're in Atlanta, you know where to go. Children's health care is where I'd send my grandkids. But if you, in a smaller town, even size of Columbus, you may want to go get a second opinion somewhere. So we'll have people that are, and today with technology, it's very easy to do. So someone in Oregon, they're an agent or they are a policyholder, and they say, can you tell us where to go? And we say, well, the University of Oregon's a great place to go. And they go there and they say, well, we want a second opinion. And then we say, okay, Children's Health Care will give you a second opinion. So they do whatever they need to do that. And it creates great solace with them as they're doing that. So it's all part of the program. And when we talked about my special Aflac Duck, I didn't bring one, but they are robotic in nature, and it was designed, and it won best in the Consumer Electronics Show in Las Vegas, and they cost us $200 a piece. So to give you an idea, when you said we've given $36,000 away, that's $7.4 million that we've given. We give every child one of these when they're diagnosed with cancer in any hospital in America. All you have to do is ask us for them, and we send it to that child. And it helps them. Young children can't express themselves. But it's so funny if you say, well, what hurts? They don't know how to tell you. But if you say, your duck is hurting, where is he hurting? And they say, well, it's right here in his neck. And we've learned from all the research that's been done that we hired these MDs and PhDs to do all this work, that it's really helping the children. So that's what we're trying to do. And that goes back to the brand. It takes a lifetime to build a brand with a company, but it only takes a few seconds to kill it. And so protecting that brand as a CEO is one of my most important jobs to do.
Speaking of the brand, can you walk us through how you landed on the vision of the duck being the image of Aflac?
Well, let me just say that when we were looking, we started with a national advertising campaign in I was trying to think, I guess it was about 1992. And we tried to build a brand. And after about 3 years, our name recognition was only about 4% because there were 200 companies that had American in their name. There were 50 that had family, and there was literally, as you've seen on TV, there is an American Family Life insurance company. Well, we are American Family Life Assurance Company. And we knew we could never do it, so we ended up going with the acronym Aflac. And the problem we ran into is trying to get people to identify and come up. So we ended up going outside and hiring several firms to make presentations. And we actually had 25 different presentations made on different commercials. And we had one at the time by Ray Romano, who everyone loves. Raymond was the #1 TV show in America on CBS. And in this commercial that we could make, and it was storyboard type telling, Ray was with children and it formed Aflac. The highest score on the scoring that we do was we had scored a 12. Financial services is considered very low scoring because it's not like a product that a TV you cut on every day and you like it or you don't like it. It is a promise on a piece of paper. Within financial services, banking scores much higher than insurance because you have checks that you write every day or deposits you make. And so all those things add up. So in the case, here we are with a 12, and that's the average, and we've never scored higher than that. I realized we've got to do something bold. And I never dreamed that they would come back with the idea of the Aflac Duck. Well, the Aflac Duck, when we tested it, it scored a 27. That's almost 3 times, well, 2.5 times. I'm a salesman. 2.5 times, 2.5 times better than anything we'd ever run. The problem was we were making fun of our name. And back then, you didn't have insurance commercials that were funny. You didn't have the gecko. You didn't have a flow. You didn't have any of those things. And so I was scared to death that people wouldn't like it. I had told the advertising agency that I would go with whatever scored the best if it was in good taste. And the Aflac Duck came back first. And so on Millennial Day, January 1, 2001, we thought worldwide that there was going to be this problem. Remember Y2K1000, when they thought all the computers wouldn't be able to change over from 1999 to 2000? I mean, you weren't born, I know, but anyway, it took place. And so everyone was going to be watching the news and watching everything. Well, there was no problems, and they didn't have anything to fill their day up with, so they ran the Aflac Duck over and over. We bought CNN over and over and over again, and we were amazed. But I realized at that moment that I had bet my entire life on a damn duck. And I was scared to death it wasn't going to work. But it did. And we ended up taking our name recognition to 90%. Now, that's good. I mean, that is Nike levels, Coca-Cola levels. It's great. But just to put it in perspective, what advertising can do, we spend about $125 million a year on advertising. Geico spends $3 billion. So 30 times more than we do. And yet our name recognition is almost the same. And even the state farms in all states spend 1.7 to 2 billion a year. And so having the right brand and protecting it and the things you do, you have to follow through. It was so funny. When we first came out with the Aflac Duck, our agents are enthusiastic. Salespeople are enthusiastic. They all wanted to go buy a duck costume and start to wear it. And we said, no. You cannot wear a duck costume. And we had all these duck rules that you couldn't do. And we learned it from Coca-Cola. There's certain rules they had of Coca-Cola Red and all the things that they do. And we followed our rules. That and we made people mad that worked for us, that wanted to be able to do anything else. No, and when you see a white duck, most of America will say Aflac. One of the things that was interesting about, and this is the last thing I'll say, I can talk about it all day long, but is that when we did our survey to see how it worked, the head people that were in charge of doing all the statistics told me they needed to meet with me. And I thought, what is it you want? And he said, we got to tell you something. 73% of the people that we asked the question had to quack the name Aflac. He said, we've never seen anything like it. He said they wouldn't just say Aflac, they go Aflac. And he said, I don't know where this thing's going to go from here. Well, within 3 years, we had doubled our sales and things were taking off, and it continues to really make a difference, and it's been a big success for us.
Absolutely. That is an incredible story. Thank you so much, Mr. Amos, for your wisdom and insight and for sharing your experiences with us. We now have a few minutes to answer some questions from the audience. Yes.
Good morning. Thank you so much for taking the time to be here today. My name's John Neely. I'm a 2024 Fall Fellow studying finance at MIS. As a Terry student, taking several classes in Amos Hall, I just want to say thank you so much for your contributions to the university. But I'm curious, when deciding where to focus your efforts to the community service, what factors do you consider?
Well, I look at, as I've been blessed and been given opportunities to invest back, we'll say, and give personally, it gets bigger, but I still focus on certain things that are important to me and what takes place. Because as a CEO, and I'm going to talk both ways, as an individual and as a CEO. As a CEO, I always tell people all the time that you have to remember that almost in every case with a CEO, if somebody that works for you had the opportunity, they've already said the yes. So all you get to do is say the no. They pass it on, the buck on. And so I get all these ideas, and you have to narrow them down in scope and stay very focused on what it is you want to do. And so philanthropically, we made the decision that we were going to stay in healthcare as being our number one. So we ended up doing the Aflac Cancer Center. Do we give money for other things that are in healthcare? Yes, but our main focus is there. And your ability to stay true to that becomes hard, because I don't get the call. I get the call from another CEO that says to me, how about helping me over here by getting Aflac to give because of that, and the networking that takes place. So you have to figure out how you're going to do it. Now, in our case, we have a group of, I think it's 6 people that do, we have pools of money that we give. We have the pool that's for Columbus, we have the pool that's for all other areas, and then we have the Aflac Cancer Center. And the group of 6 has to take into account what's best for the community, what's best for the employees, that's going on in their town or whatever is important they're doing, and do those things. And we let them help make the decisions. I'm a big believer in counting on surveys and research to make decisions. Anything from having a company sales convention where the city is. I don't care where it is. I just want to produce a lot of business. So wherever they say they want to go, doesn't matter to me. Well, guess what? The number one place they want to go, because you have to keep them in the U.S., is Hawaii. Well, guess what? The most expensive place to go is Hawaii. So we don't put Hawaii on the list, but every 5 years to choose from, because we know every year they would choose that. Well, you run into situations like that, and then on the other hand, philanthropically, we ask the people what's important to them. And, one of the things that they're interested in is healthcare. So we have a doctor on staff and PAs on staff that will take care of our employees. For example, if you're over a certain age, mammograms or prostate exams, we've got it set up where they can do it at our doctor's area at the company that's separate for them, where they can do those type of things. So philanthropically, it's all about honing in on what's important to you. But don't be naive to think that you'll get calls from people that are important to you that you hadn't got to give something. So you need a separate pool to be able to identify that. Because generally all the things they're given to are good ideas. It's just you don't have enough money to spread around.
Absolutely. We have time for one more question.
Hi, Mr. Amos. Thank you so much for being here today again. My name is Hazel McQueen. I'm a 2026 Leonard Leadership Scholar. I know we touched on this in a previous conversation, but could you tell me more about Aflac's expansion into Japan and kind of explain it more to the crowd?
Well, the Japan story is probably as fascinating as the Aflac Duck story is, in that we insure 1 out of 4 households in Japan. We have a relationship with Dai-ichi Life, the largest life insurance company in Japan, who sells our product through their 50,000 agents. I have a relationship with Japan Post that has 22,000 offices throughout Japan, and all the post offices sell our insurance. We have 92% of all the companies listed on the Tokyo Stock Exchange. I go over there, I used to go every other month. Now I go a little bit less, trying to get down to 3 this year, but normally, this will be our 50th year of doing business in November. And so we will be going over there for our 50th anniversary of doing business. And what I would tell you that's interesting in Japan is, how does a little company in Columbus, Georgia, I'm talking about little. When I graduated from here, our assets were under $100 million. We have days where we invest $100 million in new cash flow, to give you an idea. So in one day, we hit it sometimes. And the answer is partly vision. My uncle, who was brilliant, but one of these guys that told a joke, nobody got it. You know, people like that. But he went to Osaka to the World's Fair, and he saw a thriving economy, and he said he saw people wearing surgical masks. Well, because of COVID, we all know what that means. But back then, he had no idea. And he said, why are they wearing surgical masks? And they said, well, it's such a crowded country on the bullet trains and everything else that they don't want to spread the cold. And he went just like that, and he said, anybody that'll do that will buy insurance, if they're that health conscious. And from there, he spent 5 years trying to get a license. And the reason they ultimately gave us a license, we were the first company after the war to get a license outside Japan. And they said, you won't be in competition with the life insurance industry. So we're going to give you a monopoly for 7 years to sell your product. And our product was this. It paid X amount if you die under life insurance. But if you died of cancer, it paid 10 times that amount. And then it paid so much a day for every day you're in the hospital. And it took off. I mean, it took off. We sold more the first year than we sold the first 15 years combined in the U.S. And so the message that I would tell you there is, don't ever limit your thinking, but don't try to be all things to all people. You'll never make it. You just can't do that. Because the minute you get in a position, whether it be a manager of some area, everybody's got an idea. And if they've got a good one, you ought to listen, you ought to try to do it. But you can't do but so many things. And so, but when you've got a good one, as in the case of Japan and what happened to us, and people say to me, well, why aren't you in other countries, and why aren't you doing this? And my answer is, when I went in as CEO, we were licensed in 7 countries. I sold the other 5 countries because we were losing money on them. Because I found out statistically there was more life insurance in force in Japan and the U.S. than the rest of the world combined. So I honed in on doing that, and that has made the difference in why we've stayed. And I'm constantly, I'll have today, somebody has a great idea on something that they want to do. And they're not bad ideas. It's just you can't do all things to all people. So if you concentrate, you'll be better at what you do. And that's what I would say.
Dan, thank you so much for being with us today, for your inspirational words, as well as your great example of public leadership. I have a gift as a token of our appreciation for you being with us today.
Thank you.
I'd like to read a few words from today's sponsor, Keith Mason. Keith writes, I want to thank President Moorhead, Dean Ayers, members of the UGA administration, the Terry College ILA team, and most importantly, the students for their hard work and dedication and preparation for delivering this morning's program with Dan Amos. I'm honored and humbled that Dan would once again be a featured participant in the Mason Public Leadership Lecture at UGA today. And I regret that I'm not able to attend in person due to travel restrictions associated with recovery from a recent eye surgery while out of state. I look forward to getting back to Athens later this fall. As you probably noticed today, Dan Amos is truly not only one of America's best corporate CEOs, but he is also a tremendous public leader in his community of Columbus, Georgia, across our state, and across our nation and the world. He personifies what this public leadership program is all about. For example, his leadership on important issues such as childhood cancer care and research, on-site child care for Aflac employees, shareholder governance on CEO compensation, and greater diversity in the workplace, the boardroom, and C-suite are all reflective of a personal commitment of Dan to always try to do the right thing. Thank you, Dan, for your time today with students, and I wish everyone a good day, and go Dogs. And on behalf of the Terry College of Business, thank you all for being here. I hope everyone has a great week, and of course, go Dogs, beat Auburn.